This is Artful Discourse, your weekly escape into the vibrant world of creativity, culture, and intellectual exploration. I'm your host, Benjamin Kirk, and I invite you to join me on a journey through the rich tapestry of human thought and the beating heart of artistic expression at Fresno State's College of Arts and Humanities. Today, our guest is Dr. Veena Howard, Professor of Asian Religious Traditions in the Department of Philosophy. She is the endowed chair of the Jain and Hindu Dharma, and she is a prolific publisher of books and scholarly journals. And she was recently appointed the director of the M.K. Gandhi Center, Inner Peace in Sarvodaya. Next week, the Gandhi Center is opening a physical space on the third floor of the Fresno State Library. And today she joins us with one of her students, Alareza. Welcome, Dr. Howard and Alareza.
Thank you, Ben. Happy to be here.
Thank you for inviting me.
All right, Dr. Howard, what Asian religious traditions do you teach and what do you love about them?
A great question. I'm an expert in Hinduism and Jainism, but I also teach Buddhism and Sikhism. But in my GE courses, I teach all Asian traditions, including Taoism, Confucianism, Shinto, just name them. But so I have a wide variety of courses that I focus on. And now I have developed a course on Jain and Hindu traditions because I serve as an endowed chair for Jain and Hindu Dharma.
You were named director of the M.K. Gandhi Center, Inner Peace in Sarvodaya last year. And at 4 p.m. on Wednesday, the center is opening a brand new space on the third floor of the library. Can you tell me a little bit about this opening event and what people can expect?
So the center, as a virtual center space, began 1.5 years ago with the endowment by the Patel Foundation, Nana Patel and Ravi Patel Foundation from Bakersfield. So we've been doing programming and events on campus, but now we have a physical space. So this is a very exciting time. So the space has the pictures of Gandhi, Martin Luther King Jr., Cesar Chavez, Nelson Mandela, and also whole collected works of Gandhi, as well as books on different peace activists and leaders. And the space will serve as a space for students. They can come, study, think about inner peace and uplift of all. Also, the space is in the library, so it's very significant because library is the place for incubating, thinking about, and bringing those ideas out. And in the library third floor, and so students are already coming and seeing that space, and it will make them think about not just Gandhi as a person, but Gandhi as an idea. The idea of justice, the idea of peace, the idea of serving others, idea of standing up for what is right.
Mm-hmm. Now, you spoke to this a little bit, but how did the Gandhi Center get started?
Yes, that's a good question. So there are people in the community who have been very influenced by Gandhian ideas.
Mm-hmm.
As we know, in the United States itself and in our valley, the leaders have used Gandhian ideas to fight for rights, fight for justice, fight against oppression. For example, our own Cesar Chavez in the community. And our donors are from Bakersfield, and so they are really aware of Cesar Chavez's work and Dolores Huerta's work. And so they wanted to do something for students. And they have done something in the Bakersfield, CSU Bakersfield as well. And now they have donated toward the center here. They have been following my work for a while, my scholarly work, and I have given talks for their events. And then when the time came, Gandhi's 150th birth anniversary, I invited community members, and they become very interested in doing something educational for students, where we really can think about, like Alareza, my student, many others who would not have had chance to study about, think about Gandhian ideas in today's world. And now, almost like I got a gift as a scholar to express and take this forward to a different level,
Hmm.
those teachings and education, and critically analyze it, not simply just follow everything. Gandhi was a product of his own time, and he was speaking many times in his own world. But we can always critically analyze it, learn from it, take it forward, just like Reverend James Lawson did, just like Martin Luther King Jr. did. Same way that we can really continue to think and engage and take it forward.
Right. And Fresno State has kind of a long tradition of it's focused on Gandhi. We have the Peace Garden outside of the library, and that gives a kind of a visual reference, but it doesn't get that deep. And this is front and center in the library, gives students the opportunity to dive deeper into it.
Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned Peace Garden. So, the Peace Garden offers a space for inspiration.
Hmm.
Peace Garden offers a space for material culture where you can, it can be educational in a different way, where the leaders are represented, their bodies are represented, and their quotes are underneath them. But now, as a university, we always are committed to analyzing ideas. We are committed to thinking about those ideas. We are committed to thinking how these ideas can be translated in practice, and more thinking how we can develop more ideas about the ideas, just like idea of nonviolence, the idea of social justice, the idea, because we are evolving. What
Hmm.
Gandhi was dealing, the gender issues and in his time about women's rights, and now we have gender issues are taking a different kind of conversation. So why not we use those ideas to inform the new conversations as well?
And there's always a need for it.
Always need for it.
Yeah.
And if that's why I think there's a, I see them as a complementary, the Peace Garden and the Gandhi
Hmm.
Center, because here is not just a study of MK Gandhi, it's the studies of inner peace and Sarvodaya, the uplift of all, which is the human need that we need to uplift. And we talk about equity now. And Gandhi's time, the word equity did not exist, right? We didn't have this, we just saw this idea like 2 years ago. Equality we had, but not equity. And now we have this, and he was talking about equity 100 years ago. Sarvodaya is equity.
Hmm.
So I think but not many people made this connection. Now, in my research as a scholar, I'm making those connections.
Now, I want to back up a little bit because we didn't quite touch on this. The name of the center is the M.K. Gandhi Center,
Yes,
colon, Inner Peace in Sarvodaya.
yes,
And I pronounced that correct, right?
correct. You
Okay.
did great.
So, just for everybody, and you kept saying Sardovia, uplift of all, or uplift for all?
Uplift of all.
Uplift of all. So, is that what it is, Sardovia? You need
So
to
Sarva,
define it.
great. So MK Gandhi Center is Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi. It was full name.
Hmm.
So we didn't want to use the full name, and we so because it's an academic institution, so we wanted to use his MK, initials and Gandhi. And there is a very intentional. We are intentional about using the two terms to define the center: inner peace and Sarvodaya. A lot of time we talk about outer peace, the peace in the communities, and all kinds of peace. But if we don't have inner peace, if we are not happy with ourselves, we are unable to bring that out. So Gandhi was really much into cultivating that peace within. And so is Dr. King. So is Reverend Lawson. I just saw him 95-year young last weekend, and who
Hmm.
was very happy to see that we have a center for a Gandhi Center. He sends his blessings for us. And the Sarvodaya is of two words. Sarva means all, Udaya means rising.
Uh,
So it's generally translated as either welfare of all, which I don't, just welfare makes it kind of a little modern term. So I just really literally is Udaya means rising of all. How can I rise them all? Help everybody rise.
now, I'm just kind of riffing here because this just popped in my head, but it kind of reminds me of the expression rising a rising tide lifts all boats.
Yeah, I think it does. But I think also when you say, what we say in our world, if we one loses in the community, we all lose.
Hmm.
And I think we sometimes traditionally were the care for a few. At a time when there were aristocrats, there were political leaders living in a very high fluton um, palaces and fancy homes. Gandhi lived himself in a very humble ashram, slept on the floor. He could have afforded. He was a very accomplished lawyer. He gave up all because he said, "I want to bring myself to the level of the peasants in India." By doing so, he was showing an example of rising, bringing everybody up. But up doesn't mean that we all are on the same level
Right.
because each one of has a different potential.
Hmm.
Each one of his different needs, different aspirations. We each have to be supported to gain our own rising, not what somebody else has. I want to be like you, but I want to be what I can be the best.
Now, I want to expand on this a little bit. Tell me about who is Mahatma Gandhi, and tell me a little about just his life and what he accomplished, briefly, if you can. I know it's a big question, but
All right, Mahatma Gandhi in 5 minutes. So Gandhi was born in
maybe
India.
even less.
Even with this, let's do 3 minutes. He was born in 1869, and he, in his autobiography, paints a picture of a very humble beginnings that he had. He's called himself. He's not very bright. He's scared of dark. He is just not sure about himself.
Hmm.
So that's why my students really relate to Gandhi because he's not like some genius just born with that, with fancy ideas, and he rise up and says, "Okay, I got all the answers." So he had very humble beginnings in his own life, the way he explains. And then when he goes to get to England to get law degree, and then he works in South Africa for an Indian firm. And then there he's thrown out of a train because he is colored. And overnight, Gandhi changes his journey from Mohandas to Mahatma. Mahatma means great soul or great
Hmm.
person starts because even though he knows the British are treating Indians badly, all colored people badly, but he never experienced first time. And suddenly, when he's thrown out in the train station, on the train station, then he realizes, I have to do something. So overnight, he reflects and he sits on the platform in a very cold night in South Africa. And the next day, and then he starts speaking about we need to do something. It takes him a long time. And then he begins campaigning for trying to find a method to confront the racism, injustices, mistreatment of colored people, Indians in South Africa. And finally, he does the first satyagraha, which is a passive resistance or nonviolent action campaign in 1906. And then he really starts following the disciplines in personal life, nonviolence, celibacy, non-stealing, simplicity. He begins to get rid of his the clothes of lawyer, Western apparel, and starts using more peasant attire of peasants. Then he comes back to India in 1915, comes back as a leader because he gets rights for Indians in South Africa. And in India, he is experienced the British Empire, and
Hmm.
then his whole life then becomes a campaign after campaign for India's freedom. So I want to just add two things, since people know him for his freedom, fight for India's freedom, but he fought for women's rights, equality. He fought against poverty in India. Above all, Hindu Muslim unity. There was a lot of problems that it didn't end very well with India Pakistan because many political factors.
Right.
Well, Gandhi really fought for Hindu Muslim unity, Hindu Muslim Sikh unity, Hindu Muslim all people unity, and he died. Not only he just lived, but died for the cause.
And then later in his life, he was also a pretty big influence on the civil rights movement here in the United States as well, correct?
Yes, he was corresponding with African American leaders in 19 late 20s, and then Howard Thurman. and his wife and a whole delegate went to see him in 1936. Imagine that.
Yeah.
They sailed on ships to see him, and they showed up in his ashrams, and their questions are all documented. And they invited Gandhi to come to America. And Gandhi said, I have much work to be done here. You guys do. And then Dr. King read Gandhi's autobiography. And then Cesar Chavez read Gandhi's autobiography and carried always with him. And Reverend Lawson told me recently, 1947, he was reading Gandhi's autobiography. So there was a whole tradition of, in the American tradition of nonviolent leaders,
Right.
can have connection with Gandhian struggle. And I'm working on my research project on that.
Yeah. And I think we were talking yesterday about kind of putting forward the idea of Gandhi, the idea versus Gandhi, the person, because a person is always flawed to some extent.
Yes.
But you talk about the idea. Can you expand about on that a little?
Yes. So the Gandhi as a person has also a lot of inspiration, as my student will tell us, is that his life is one of those lives are very inspiring. Nevertheless, he's a human being. And every human being who is born on this earth is flawed. And especially when a human being tells their own failings and fallings in publicizes them.
Mm-hmm.
We all keep our failings and fallings in our cavity of our hearts, and he published them, shared with openly. Otherwise, you wouldn't have never found about Gandhi's failings and fallings.
Yeah.
But more importantly, Gandhi would not want us to remember him for Gandhi the man or Gandhi the Mahatma. He said, word Mahatma stinks to my nostrils, I'm quoting. He wanted to be an idea of nonviolent struggle, the idea of resilience, coming out from nowhere, really, overcoming because of discipline, because of perseverance, because of self sacrifice, because of the goal that he set that was not just simply India's freedom, but was uplift of all. For him, that was the most important thing. And in that, you have to fight injustices. You cannot have injustice and oppression and have rise of all.
Right.
You have to, so that's why he was in the politics.
All right. Back to the Gandhi Center, and I'd like to bring in our next guest, Ali Raza. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yeah, that's correct. Alireza.
All right. Ali Raza, you're a student of Dr. Veena Howard. And so I just wanted to really quickly ask, what is your major? Do you have a minor? And when do you expect to graduate?
Yeah, my major is business administration finance, and I expect to graduate 2026. I don't have a minor, but I might minor in data analytics. Dr. Howard wants me to minor in philosophy. We'll see how that goes.
All right. And where are you from?
I was born in Iran, and I moved here when I was 5, and I live here in Fresno.
All right. Now I understand you're taking a class with Dr. Howard, and that's why you're in here. So I wanted to ask you, why do you think Mahatma Gandhi is important, and what inspires you about him?
To me, his discipline really inspires me. I see him as an ascetic, and that means um, a person who abstains from short-term pleasures,
Mm-hmm.
and he made many conscious sacrifices, and in turn, his discipline translated into other areas of his life, ultimately gaining India's independence and building community,
Yeah.
like Dr. Howard mentioned, um, building the relationships between the Hindus and the Muslims where they were fighting before. So before learning about Gandhi, I went on a 48-hour fast, and uh, right when I learned about Gandhi, I was able to make a lot of connections between his experiences and mine. And discipline was definitely one of them, and specifically that um, you can build a tolerance to short-term pleasures, but you can also build a tolerance to long-term goals, which is through discipline.
Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, of course. So Um, I did a 48-hour fast, and before that, I did a 24-hour fast. And I really don't think it would be as easy. It would have been as easy for me to do that 40-hour fast if I didn't do that 24-hour fast first. So that's what I mean by building tolerance through discipline.
Mm-hmm.
for someone to just start a 48-hour fast right away would be hard because they don't have that discipline of tolerance built, you know? And I think next I want to do 72 hours as well. And me doing this 48 is building that tolerance to be able to do that 72 much easier than if I have never fasted before.
Now, as you're fasting, what's the thought process? Because obviously there's some pain, there's some craving, there's you're depriving yourself of substance. So what's going on in your head during that time?
So I would say the first a couple hours and the last couple hours were the hardest because the first couple hours you're kind of thinking, oh shoot, I'm not gonna eat for the next 2 days, and then the last couple hours isn't why you think, but it would be because I was supposed to do a 40-hour fast, and I was doing it with one of my friends, and he started 2 hours after me. So he was like, okay, you could start eating, but he still had 2 hours to go. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna go 2 more hours. So that's why those last 2 hours were also hard for me because it wasn't planned.
And what insight did you gain from that experience?
I would say I definitely gained that insight of building tolerance to discipline,
Hmm.
and also that building discipline focuses on longer term goals. You know, as I mentioned, for Gandhi, this was for India's independence and community building. For me, before I even learned about Gandhi, it was just for its physical benefits. I mean, to name a few, I did a Gandhi OPED for this class, and I wrote the experts have found physical benefits were increases in metabolism, immunity, brain function, digestion, human growth hormone, insulin sensitivity, and then reduced levels in glucose levels, inflammation, reduced blood pressure and sugar levels, reduced aging, and also a trigger of autophagy, which is mainly people who fast for killing the bad cells in your body. But after learning about Gandhi, it was more than just the physical benefits. It was also the mental benefits, and I probably wouldn't have came to the conclusion of how important it is to build that tolerance for discipline if it wasn't for learning about Gandhi.
And I think it's interesting that you talk about the long term. And Dr. Howard, you wanted to.
Yeah, I think it's really when Alreza shared with me in class in front of everyone, it was so, his ideas resonated with students in a way that other presentations did not,
Hmm.
because he brought to a level that, we can talk about. Gandhi fasted a lot.
Right.
Gandhi fasted from 1 day to 21 days, water fasting. And he talks about, I want to share with Alireza what he talked about, the effects of fasting, and and he told me that he felt euphoric or felt really peaceful or
Yeah, it
something like
was
that.
very interesting throughout, like, especially after the 24th hour, because
Hmm.
what your body does physically, it shifts to burning fat rather than using the glucoses in your bloodstream, uh, which you can even notice like after having a big meal, you'll have food coma. You won't, your energy levels will go down right away. You'll just want to go take a nap, and then you'll become hungry again after you have no energy. But after the 24th hour, especially, my body knew it wasn't going to get food, so the energy levels were so steady, and it felt like that's what Dr. Howard was talking about. It felt like literally its own sort of high.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a mental. So that's the one thing about Gandhi says, that we have so much into that we give into the physical, but we don't know our mental and emotional power until we starve the physical. In a way that, so let it be all the sensory. The people talk about, why did he do celibacy? Why did he do fasting? Why did he do only 800 calories? But the guy walked 10 to 12 kilometers every single day with the 800 calories. He didn't have that kind of research, what Alariza
Right.
is mentioning. But he had his own experimentations. Jains do fasting, Hindus do fasting, Christians do fasting. All traditions have this fasting tradition for spiritual reasons. But
Yeah.
go ahead.
Now, I wanted to get to the second half of this because you talked about the tolerance to discipline, but then you also said the tolerance to short term pleasures, and I assume that's things like sugar or video games or things like that.
Yeah, I mean, I can go through. So for those examples, I can go through um, the short-term pleasures. So for sugar, let's say someone who constantly eats sugary snacks and pastries on a daily basis, they're more likely to build up the tolerance to the sugar they eat and begin to eat more and more to feel that same sort of short-term pleasure as I felt last time. And with that mindset, you can't really get someone to cut out sugar cold turkey. And for studying, let's say, or for what did you say for video
For
games?
video games, yeah.
Yeah, for video games, let's say there's a student that comes home from school and plays video games for 2 hours. It's much easier for that student to play video games for longer rather than because their mindset is that short-term pleasure goal. That's what gives them dopamine. That's what makes them happy. And another thing I learned is that short-term pleasures take away from those long-term goals because those
Mm,
short-term pleasures are live in the moment type of things.
mm,
And all the other disciplines like working out, fasting, um, what else? Doing school. All these are
mhm.
longer-term goals that you achieve, but in the moment actually doing them, you're kind of putting yourself through stress, and that's how you uh, grow.
Beautiful.
All right. Thank you so much, Alireza. Now, Veena or Dr. Howard, I'm sorry, I'm going to give you the last word to plug the MK Gandhi Center Inner Peace and Sarvodaya opening on Wednesday in the Fresno State Library. So go ahead and
Yeah.
last word. Tell us
Yes.
about it.
Thank you so much. So we have an event at 4 o'clock, the grand opening of the center, and it will be on the third floor of the library. And if you need information about it, maybe Ben can give my information, or President's office is advertising it, and it's also there is a very important event commemorating the opening of the center is a talk by Mallika Chopra. She's an author, writer, motivation speaker. Her book is called Living with Intent, and she is going to speak on living with intent. The talk is at 5 p.m., free to public, at RSU, Resnick Student Union, October 18, 5 p.m. And it's sponsored by our university president's lecture series. And her talk is very timely because Gandhi really believed in the power of intention and intent. And he was a living example of how, when you're disciplined for your intention, follow it, how you get very positive results. So please join us if you can, October 18th, 5 p.m. at RSU.
And you can find information about all of these events at calendar.fresnostate.edu. And I want to thank you, Dr. Howard and Alireza, for joining us today. And we'll see you next week for another edition of Artful Discourse. Artful Discourse is a production of the College of Arts and Humanities at California State University, Fresno. The Dean is Dr. Honora Chapman, and the Associate Dean is Dr. Sergio Laporta. This program is written, directed, and produced by me, Benjamin Kirk, the college's communication specialist. The theme song for Artful Discourse is Maiden Voyage by Fresno State music professor Benjamin Boone from his album, Joy. More information about his music can be found at benjaminboone.com. Special thanks to KFSR and FSR Underground General Manager Julie Lindahl for making this show possible. You can learn more about the College of Arts and Humanities and find an archive of our shows at our website, cah.fresnostate.edu, or on our blog, fresnostatecah.com.